When was the last time you were completely quiet? Not just alone, not just between meetings. I mean, generally quiet. No phone, no podcasts, no mental to-do list running in the background. No rehearsal of yesterday's conversation or tomorrow's pitch. Just silence. Real silence. If you had to think about it for more than a second, it's probably been a while. We've built our entire professional culture around noise. Speed, activity, constant output. And we've told ourselves, because our culture tells us, that the answer to every problem is more strategy, more hustle. The silence is the gap to be filled. That rest is laziness wearing a disguise. That answer to every problem is more strategy, more hustle, more content, more meetings, more grinding. But what if the thing you need most right now isn't more of anything but less? What if the most powerful competitive advantage you're overlooking isn't a tool or a tactic or a framework, but stillness? Eckhart Tolle wrote a short, quiet, and wildly countercultural book called Stillness Speaks. It's not a business book, doesn't have a framework. There are no 5-step processes. There are no case studies. It is, in Tolle's own words, a book of pointers. Each chapter a signpost towards a single destination, a profound intelligence that lives beneath the surface noise of your mind. Today on Mind Your Business, we're going to bring that book into your world as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as someone building something, not to slow you down, but to make everything you do land with more precision, more clarity, and more power. So welcome, and let's get quiet. Quick word on Eckhart Tolle and his particular book, because context really does matter. Tolle is probably the best known for The Power of Now, which became one of the best-selling spiritual books in the last 30 years. Stillness Speaks came later, and in some ways it goes deeper. It's a shorter book, written almost like a collection of contemplations rather than a linear argument. Oprah called it one of the most important books she had ever read. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations was written in a similar spirit, not a document for public, but a series of private reminders to return to what matters. The central premise is this: constant chatter of your thinking mind beneath the planning, the worrying, the strategizing, the self-narrating. There is a dimension of stillness that is always already present. Tolle calls this presence or being or the now. And he argues that most people, most leaders, most entrepreneurs, most humans spend their entire lives on the surface of that noise and never touch the depth underneath it. Eckhart Tolle said, when you lose touch with the inner stillness, you lose touch with yourself. And when you lose touch with yourself, you lose yourself in the world. That is a business problem. When you lose touch with yourself, your decisions become more reactive rather than intentional. Your leadership becomes performance rather than presence. Your relationships becomes transactions rather than connections. And the thing you set out to build starts to feel hollow, no matter how successful it looks from the outside. Tolle's book is an invitation to return, and today we're going to explore what the return looks like inside a business life. First thing that Tolle addresses in Stillness Speaks is silence. He makes a distinction I think every leader in this audience needs to sit with. He distinguishes between outer silence and inner silence. You can be quiet in a room and still be deafeningly loud inside. And you could be in the middle of a busy airport and touch a moment of genuine inner stillness. The noise that damages you most is not around you, it's in you. And true intelligence operates silently. Stillness is where creativity and solutions to problems are found. Now, Tolle has a phrase, the compulsive thinker. He defines it as someone who cannot stop the flow of thoughts even when they want to. And his claim, which is worth sitting with, is that most of us are compulsive thinkers, and we don't even know it because we've never tried to stop. So try it now. Close your eyes for 30 seconds and try to have zero thoughts. Go ahead, try it. Not suppress thoughts, just observe whether you can be quiet inside. Most people last about 4 seconds before the mind starts up again. The grocery list, the thing that someone said last Tuesday's call, quarter numbers, the email you haven't answered, the meeting you're dreading, the voice in your head that's narrating this very moment. That's the default setting. And Tolle says you are not your thoughts. The thinker and the thoughts are not the same thing. There's something behind the thinking that can observe the thinking. And that something is closer to who you actually are than any thought you've ever had. Eckhart Tolle said, the mind is a superb instrument if used rightly. Used wrongly, however, it becomes very destructive. To put it more accurately, it's not so much that you use your mind wrongly, it's you usually don't use it at all. It uses you. This is the core of what Tolle means by presence, not the absence of thought, but the ability to be conscious of thought without being consumed by it, to observe the mental weather without becoming the storm. When you operate from the compulsive thinking, from the unexamined mental noise, your decisions are being made by pattern, by fear, by past conditioning, by ego, not by clear judgment, and not by strategic wisdom, not by the deepest and the best version of your instincts. The leader who can access genuine stillness, even briefly, even imperfectly, makes different decisions, asks better questions, listens more accurately, and sees what others miss, not because they're smarter, but because they're less cluttered. Now in Psalms chapter 46, verse 10, it says, "Be still and know that I am God." The verse appears in ancient Hebrew as rapa, which literally means to cease striving or let go. The stillness being described is not passive vacancy. It is the active release of the compulsive need to control, to solve, or even to perform. And in that release, you get clarity. And in that clarity, you get knowing. And this is not just a spiritual posture, it's a leadership one. There are two themes in Stillness Speaks that resonated with me. As I read them through the lens of leadership, the first is Tolle's treatment of the ego. The second is the concept of the present moment, or what he simply calls the now. Tolle describes the ego as part of us that has built an identity out of stories. Stories about who we are, what we deserve, what we've achieved, who wronged us, and why we're right. Ego is always either living in the past or projecting into the future. It almost never lives in the present. And here's why this matters in business. The ego makes terrible long-term decisions. It acquires, competes, defends, rather than creates, collaborates, and builds. It measures success by comparison. Who has more? Who's ahead? Who's watching? It is allergic to vulnerability, which means it cannot truly learn. It cannot course correct. It cannot be wrong without feeling like an existential threat. Ego wants to have more than it wants to have. Satisfying the ego's wants is always only a temporary relief. How many business decisions have you made or watched others make or driven by ego rather than wisdom? The acquisition that is more about the status and strategy. The refusal to pivot because the original plan was your idea. The inability to hear critical feedback because it felt like an attack on your identity. The need to be the smartest person in the room, even when the room has people smarter than you. Tolle is not saying eliminate your drive. He's saying learn to distinguish between ego-driven ambition and soul-driven purpose. One is brittle, anxious, and exhausting. The other is resilient, grounded, and sustainable. Stillness is what gives you access to the second kind. Now, as a business tool, Tolle's concept of the present moment, the now, is often misunderstood as passivity. It isn't. It's precision. When you are fully present, you're not distracted by yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's anxieties. You are here with this person in this conversation, working on this problem, with your full intelligence available. That's an extraordinary advantage, because the truth is that most people in most meetings are not actually there. They are physically present, but mentally elsewhere. Half in their inbox, half in the last conversation, half rehearsing what they're going to say next. Presence is rare, and people can feel it when you have it. It's the most magnetic leadership quality there is, and it costs nothing except the willingness to actually show up. Eckhart Tolle says, as soon as you honor the present moment, all unhappiness and struggle dissolve, and life begins to flow with joy and ease. That sounds mystical, but it describes something neurologically real. When you stop fighting the present and you stop wishing the meeting was over, wishing the quarter was different, wishing this employee were someone else, and actually engage with what is, your problem-solving capability dramatically increases. The resistance itself was consuming cognitive bandwidth. Now in Psalms chapter 118, verse 24, it says, "This day which the Lord has made, we will rejoice and be glad in it." This day, not tomorrow's outcome, not last quarter's regret. This day, this moment, is where your life and your work are actually happening. And how much of it are you actually in? Two final threads from Stillness Speaks that I want to bring to your attention: impermanence and acceptance. Tolle spends significant time in this book describing what he can learn from nature, particularly the way natural things simply exist without resistance. A tree doesn't fight winter. It doesn't resist losing its leaves or rage against the cold. It yields, conserves, and trusts the cycle. And then it grows again, not despite of the winter, but partly because of it. Tolle said, the natural world can be a doorway into the realm of stillness. Look at a tree, a flower, a plant. Let your awareness rest upon it, how still they are, how deeply rooted in being. In business, we are terrible at impermanence. We fight it constantly. We try to make the good quarter permanent. We resist the bad one, wishing it away rather than learning from it. We hold on to strategies that have expired. We hold on to people who have outgrown their roles or whose roles have outgrown them. We hold on to our self-image as a person who has always done it a certain way. Tolle says, the recognition that all things are impermanent is not depressing. It is actually liberating. When you stop grasping at the good and resisting the bad, you can move through both with far more elegance and speed. The market shifted. Okay. The strategy isn't working. All right. The partnership is over. Well, okay, what's next? The leader who has made peace with impermanence does not waste energy on fighting what is. They redirect that energy towards what can be. Marcus Aurelius called this the art of acquiescence, not submission to injustice, but the mature recognition that some things are not in our control, and fighting them only diminishes us. Tolle and Aurelius, separated by 2,000 years, are pointing to the same door. The word acceptance triggers a lot of successful people. It sounds passive. It sounds like settling. But Tolle is very clear. Acceptance does not mean you don't act. It means you act from a place of clarity rather than from a place of reactivity and resistance. There's an enormous difference between the leader who addresses a crisis from a grounded, clear-eyed place of, this is what it is, and here's what we're going to do about it, and the leader who has 3 meetings into a panic spiral, making reactive decisions fueled by fear and ego and the desperate need to not look bad. First leader produces better outcomes, not because they feel less, but because they're not letting their feelings run the meeting. Stillness is what creates that gap. The half second between what happens and how you respond. The gap is where your best leadership lives. Tolle says stillness is not the absence of life or energy. It is life in its most essential, undistorted form. Philippians chapter 4, verse 7, it says, "And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus." A peace that passes understanding, not a peace that makes logical sense given your circumstances, not a peace you earn by resolving every problem, a peace that is available independent of conditions. Same stillness Tolle is describing, rooted not in detachment, but in connection to something greater than the situation. Now, let's make this practical, because Tolle is not writing for monks and you're not running a monastery. So here's how stillness can actually enter a business life, not as an escape from it, but a foundation beneath it. First, let's talk about the 2-minute reset. Before any high-stakes meeting, negotiations, or difficult conversation, 2 minutes of genuine silence. No agenda review, no mental rehearsal, just breath and let the noise settle. Enter a room from stillness rather than momentum. You'll make better decisions and the room will feel it. Another one is single tasking. Tolle talks about bringing full presence to whatever you're doing. In practice, one conversation at a time, one task at a time, no device during meetings, full attention to the person in front of you. This is radical in our culture, and it's also the most practical form of stillness available to a busy leader. Now let's talk about morning stillness. Before you reach your phone, before your inputs begin, spend 10 minutes in silence. Not structured prayer necessarily, though that counts, just quiet. Let your mind surface what it needs to surface, without the noise of the world telling it what to think about. This one practice, done consistently, changes the quality of your whole day. Another way is nature as a reset. Tolle returns again and again to nature as a doorway to stillness. Even 10 minutes outside, genuinely outside, phone down, looking at something that isn't screened, measurably restores cognitive function. This isn't self-help advice. This is actually neuroscience. The default mode network needs fallow time. Nature provides it. Another way is journaling the presence. At the end of the day, not a to-do list, not a performance review, just this. What was I present for today? Where did I lose presence? What did I miss because I was mentally elsewhere? This practice, over time, develops the very awareness Tolle says is the foundation of everything. Now, choose one day this week to begin without your phone for the first 20 minutes. Sit in silence, drink your coffee, look out a window, and notice what emerges, what clarity, what anxiety, what ideas, and write it down. Then bring that same quality of stillness into your first meaningful conversation of the day. Report back to yourself honestly about the difference. Now, let me leave you with this. The world you are competing with has never been noisier. Your competitors are drowning in the same inputs as you are. They are running the same reactivity loops. They are making decisions at the same frantic pace from the same place of scattered, distracted, ego-driven thinking. The noise is your industry's operating system. Stillness is your edge, not because it makes you slow, but because it makes you clear. And to be a clear leader, the one who can pause, perceive, and respond with a place of genuine presence and inner stability will consistently outperform a frantic one. Not occasionally, consistently. Eckhart Tolle wrote in his book, Stillness Speaks, as an invitation and not a prescription. He doesn't ask you to meditate for 4 hours a day or retreat from the world. He asks something far more difficult and far more available, that you become conscious of the present moment you are already in, that you stop treating now as a stepping stone to somewhere else, that you recognize the stillness that is already underneath the noise, waiting, and has always been waiting for you to notice it. Tolle says you are not separate from the whole. You are one with the sun, the earth, the air. You don't have a life. You are life. Read this book. It's short, it's quiet, and it will do something to you in a way move you through the days, if you let it. Your challenge this week is simple. Find 10 minutes of genuine silence every day. No agenda, no productivity, just stillness. And notice what begins to speak. In Isaiah chapter 30, Verse 15, it says, "In returning and rest you shall be saved. In quietness and in trust you shall be your strength." In quietness, in trust. That is not a retreat from a fight. That is where the strength for the fight is found. So thank you for watching Mind Your Business. Go, be still, and then go build something worth building. Let your mindset be strong.